Hello everybody, it's Susan again, and we're back with part 2 of Mars retrograding and also Neptune stationing direct, but we'll carry the two together. It's pretty much within the same few hours, so they are almost like a simultaneous event, and on top of that we've also got Venus that's going to be moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, where she's going to join up with Pluto. She joined up with Pluto earlier in 2024, also in the early degrees of Aquarius, so this is not the first round, but it's definitely going to be the first of many over the next couple of decades where we're going to have to get used to the Venus-Pluto motif, which is all about power struggles, issues around love and money that might be something to do with extreme wealth, the abuse of power of wealth. That's Pluto is always getting to the root of things, to getting to the truth of things. And what's interesting about this Venus transition is that she then starts her opposition to this Mars, which is retrograding. So there's a lot of activity around this moment in time. So this first, say, half of December is quite active and dynamic, I think, in a psychological way as much as in an actual physical way, where we're going to see things happening in the world around us. And at the same time that Mars, which is up here at 6 degrees 10 minutes, just having stationed retrograde in Leo, at the same time that that's retrograding, we also have this almost Kazemi Mercury, so meaning that it's moving into the heart of the sun. That'll only be just a day and a half later, and at the same time that it does that, it's going to be opposing Jupiter. So there's a lot going on here. We maintained the square to Saturn that was there since the new moon of the 1st of December, the Sagittarius new moon, which was at 9 degrees, so broadly squaring the Saturn at now 13 degrees of Pisces. And Saturn is itself preparing to move into its square with Jupiter, which is going to be on the 24th, 25th of December. So lots of things going on in the sky right now. And all of this, as I said in the introductory video, is really very much about what we want to do in terms of changing our direction, changing our sense of urgency around things, or maybe our sense of dynamism in different areas of our life, our priorities, our ambitions, our drives, all Mars words. And those Mars words also imply a desire nature, and Venus also implies a desire nature. So when Venus and Mars are in opposition, we can have a really strong desire, especially when Pluto is involved. So Pluto opposite Mars will be exact on the 3rd of January. It already happened on the 4th of November, but it's basically moving into that exactitude the closer that Mars gets to the beginning of Leo, which will happen on the 6th of January. So Mars is 1 month essentially in Leo, stationing on the 6th at 6 degrees 10 minutes, and it takes a month for Mars to then go back 6 degrees into Cancer. So much dynamism around this time that is very personal to us as well as collective. The personal planets like the moon and the sun and Venus and Mars are really where we put a lot of our energy, Mercury of course as well, putting a lot of our attention and energy in an everyday way. These are things that show up in our everyday life in an everyday way. And when they start to align in these unusual ways, because these are all really tight configurations and very impactful and simultaneous, there's something that's going to change. And this can be coming from an outer impulse, because that Jupiter square Saturn can also show that there's an outer worldly impulse. There's something going on in the world around us. Or the configuration here, for example, between the moon, which is now in a square to Uranus, which is the people. The moon in a mundane chart would be the people, or the consciousness of collective agreement or collective societies, in a square to Uranus. And Uranus is still in retrograde motion in Taurus. It's going to go back to 23 degrees, and it's only stationing direct at the end of January. So this tension that's there between the square to the moon, the conjunction here with Pluto and Venus, and then in opposition to Mars, and then this opposition between Mercury and the Sun and Jupiter, which is creating soon to be creating a T-square Just really, it's kind of a messy T-square at the moment, but we can call it one all of this week that we're leading up from, let's say, the 4th of December through till about the 7th or 8th. This energy is about dynamic change. It's about something that has to give. Something has to change. Now, we'll see sign by sign how this applies to each individual, but there's something that can be quite impulsive or based on emotional desire, based on a willingness or a desire to change. A frustration, because these are all Mars words, frustration, a drive, a passion, but also anger and frustration building into resentment and building into a desire for something to be different. So Leo is very much about one's self-awareness. It's ruled by the sun. And the sun is ourselves, it's our consciousness, it's our purpose, and our sense of importance in life, or the significance of this lifetime. And when Mars is in Leo, often because it's a fixed sign and because it's a fire sign, we can have these energies that are very strong convictions around what we're here to do, strong conviction around what this sense of purpose and drive is. Yet when Mars goes retrograde, that might be thrown into question. And that questioning can start with this consideration of the Venus-Pluto conjunction, which is now looking at things from a much more profound perspective. There's a deeper need for change. And because Venus and Pluto will be both in the first degree of Aquarius, we're looking at a deeper need for societal change or collective change, or the change in the way that we integrate into all of that individually. The belief system is part of that. We see that with the Sun and Mercury. Mercury, when it gets very, very close to the Sun, we see that in a natal chart. The opinions can be very personal, because one doesn't necessarily separate out one's ideas and opinions and beliefs from what you might call objective reality. So there can be a tendency to personally identify, egoically identify with the thoughts and feelings and opinions of that Mercury, and the quality will change depending on the sign that Cazimi is happening in. But it's worth paying attention to that. It's worth knowing that, because that is often the signature of someone who's not really aware of how their own biases or how their own ways of thinking are coloring their opinions or coloring their choices. Now we have to extrapolate and see this is also global and as well as personal. And then that in opposition to Jupiter, which is very happy and social and gregarious up there in Gemini. And so there may be this over-optimistic take on things, or an exuberant idea of what it is that one should do. That Jupiter is ruling Sagittarius. It's very out there, very playful, adventurous, exuberant, lots of fiery desire to learn, desire to explore, desire to grow and expand. That's very Sagittarius. And when Jupiter is in Gemini, it's very curious. It's got this desire to understand on a granular level, much more detail, understand the facts, what's going on. And Mercury and Jupiter are interplaying with each other. They're helping each other here. Very, very constructive in that sense. But at the same time, it can be a lot of everything. Now, this is the way that the retrograde is beginning. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue this way. And we have this retrograde kind of in two parts. So we have the Mars retrograde phase in Leo, which I'm going to focus on today for the sake of brevity, if nothing else, because that lasts a month. And then later in December, I'm going to come back and we'll talk about the Mars retrograding back into Cancer, which is going to change the flavor of the retrograde. The energy of Mars in Cancer we felt very strongly in September and October. Mars will go all the way back to 17 degrees of Cancer, and then it will station direct on the 24th of February. Then it's going to go back through Cancer and only leave Cancer on the 18th of April. And then it will continue its journey through Leo through the rest of April, covering the territory that we're just covering now through November and December. And so pay attention to what was going on in your life or collectively to this, especially November, because in the early part of November when Mars moved in to Leo, it was in its first opposition. That was the very first opposition. No, it was at the very end of Cancer and the very end of Capricorn, where we find Venus today at the Mars retrograde. But it will build then into a 1 degree opposition on the 3rd of January. And that we can see as a kind of a bookend compared to what was going on already in November and December. We're going back to something. We're revising something. So think about this as I'm going through sign by sign, what you might be going back to that was already really active for you at the end of October and the beginning of November. Because this is a pattern that is going to repeat in several different ways with slight nuance each time, but we're going to have a repeating pattern through the whole 7 months of this Mars movement through Cancer and Leo through the retrograde phase. It's actually even longer than that, because by the time Mars gets out of Leo, it's mid-June. So it's more like 10 months. It's a long period of time. So this is a story that is a long arc of your life in this particular moment, and it has to do with your ambitions and your drives and what it is you want to put your attention on. Mars is about your aims in this moment. What do you strive for in this moment? In Leo, there's always a flavor of integrity as well. Where are you in or out of integrity in the Leo area of your life? Now, this will be different depending on the natal sign, your ascendant sun or moon sign, which I'll explain as we go. But it's worth bearing in mind in a general sense that that's part of the story. If there are issues in a Mars retrograde in Leo, those issues may come from initially not being in integrity around the energy of the Mars in Leo in that particular chart. And that, what does that mean? So it means that either you're doing something in a more nonchalant way, that you're not really taking care of what you should be taking care of. You're not taking responsibility, whether that be for yourself or for money or for a relationship or for your children or whatever the thing is. That will be revealed as we go through sign by sign. Or it can also be around actual issues of integrity, not being in alignment with yourself. Leo is very much about your self-expression. It's about being yourself, manifesting yourself in this way that is natural to you, this way of you being you. And as we go through this, let's say, month-long questioning or approach to the Mars retrograding through Leo, it's really worth being honest with yourself as part of being in integrity, being honest with yourself, and noticing where there may have been things that you let slide, not because you're a bad person, but because either you didn't have time, or it didn't feel important at the time, or you were looking the other way, or it felt too difficult. There's a million reasons why things may not have been in alignment with what was the right thing to do at any given time. Now we have this Saturn, which is in a square to Jupiter, coming closer and closer as we get to the end of December. And that's also going to be part of this story of what is the right thing to do. So there's a bigger picture that's unfolding, and Mars is just pointing you in the direction of what is this moment's action? What's the required action in these times, in this moment? Now, as we have Neptune stationing also direct just a few short hours after, so it's on the 7th of December, we also are going to start to experience, but this is much more subtle than the Mars. It's definitely much more subtle. You won't necessarily see that unless you have planets between sort of 25, 26 of Pisces and let's say 2 degrees of Aries, or we could even extend that to 4 or 5 degrees of Aries because the North Node is still there. That Neptune shift is much more subtle, but yet it's important to understand that that's also part of where we start to realize where we have been acting from perhaps illusions or places of lacking clarity, lacking personal clarity, or lacking clarity of things and people around us. And this will help to clarify whatever has been unclear for the last few months. As Neptune moves out of Pisces on the 30th of March. So this is now the last turning of Neptune for these next few months, as Neptune is about to leave Pisces for the first time, ending this 165-year cycle of Neptune, going through the zodiac, and it's starting up this new cycle of Neptune going into Aries. So as I mentioned in the original video I did a couple of days back, the sort of introduction to this week, this mad, busy week of astrology, there's something here that we want to keep in mind that is a big picture of what it is that we need to change in our lives and in our way of showing up, in our way of acting socially, individually, and in terms of who we are who we know ourselves to be, who we believe ourselves to be. That's still very much in line with that Jupiterian Pisces and Sagittarius energy. It's depth of knowledge, depth of self-awareness. This is where we're going. And Mars is very strong in Leo in terms of self-awareness. Now, it can act selfishly at times. The fire signs can all have their selfish tendencies, but especially Mars in Leo can sometimes act in a way that feels right in the moment, but only later one realizes that actually it was, in fact, a selfish thing. When Mars is aware, when we use that awareness, the bigger picture Piscean and Jupiterian Sagittarius awareness, especially as there's this opposition to Jupiter and a square from Jupiter to Saturn that it's ruling, the onus is on us to become aware of what is real. Who am I really? What is life? And the decisions that I make, the choices that I make, the things that I do are a reflection of who I believe myself to be, always. So when somebody's acting, when you're taking decisions, when you're doing anything, it's always a reflection of who you think you are and how you think you fit in. And here we come back to the Pluto and Venus, and especially that moon in square to, from Aquarius, in square to Uranus, how you think you fit in to the bigger puzzle of society. Right, so all of that to say that we're going to be doing quite a lot of internalizing and thinking, and some of the actions that we need to take are going to be corrective. They're actions that we need to take to revise or fix or resolve or review, at the very least, whatever we have already undertaken, and especially so from early November through now to this point of the retrograding in the early part of December. So these stages are progressions. So there's nothing that you need to fix in this moment. It's not like, oh gosh, I got to sort it all out, figure it all out. Who am I? What am I doing? What's the next step? Don't let yourself get caught up in this feeling of panic around needing a purpose. So this is one of the negative things of social media, speaking of Mars and Leo, is that there's been a lot of pressure on this notion of finding your passion and living your bliss and all that sort of Joseph Campbell stuff, which is interesting and very helpful, but it requires a certain level of maturity and also a bigger sense of what it is that you're doing. It's not about being happy all the time. One can be basically happy, have a very happy life, and still have bad days or bad moments in a day. We can't really have a bad day. It's 24 hours. It's a long time to feel bad. But we can be basically happy and still have things go wrong, still have problems, still have issues. It doesn't take away from our basic capacity to be happy. And yet, when people apply that to a job, they say, or a sense of purpose, they say, I must be thrilled with every moment of my life if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm doing my thing, if I'm living my life. I should live it on my terms. Well, that would be the selfish or the less evolved way of looking at Mars in Leo, which is basically to say, I should get what I want. That's the sort of Mars in Leo having a tantrum and being the spoiled brat, which is one of the less nice qualities of the Leo, which is a sense of wanting it all for oneself. These are archetypes. That doesn't describe you, so don't put in the comments that I'm a nice person and you just said mean things about Leo. It's an archetype. It's an archetype, and there's a whole range of factors that go into an archetype. There's also magnificent qualities to every sign, and especially Leo. When Mars in Leo is in its position of strength, where it's courageous and it's understanding its purpose and its value, it's going to make decisions based on its stronger sense of courage towards other people, doing the right thing. That is like often the signature of a firefighter or somebody who goes in and helps. The hero comes to rescue the person in distress, and there's this quality of dynamism that is, when Mars is clear in Leo, that there's a knowing of what is right, what's the right thing to do. And it is not a selfish act. It's an act based on what is possible for me in this moment. So all of this to say that the more we get caught up in this idea that for me to be living my life on my terms in that Leo way of self-expression, if we think that we need to be somehow, that everything needs to align to make us comfortable, then we're mistaken. And for that, I invite you to read autobiographies of people who have been historically extremely influential, very important, and you will see that they go through hell to achieve the things that they achieve. Most of the time, their life is not comfortable. So doing the right thing is not about personal comfort. And if you strive only for personal comfort, you're never going to be able to accomplish what you could in this lifetime. So all of this challenge, all of this opposition, all these squares and this tension that's brewing between Mars in opposition to Venus, what are my desires, and are those coming from a good place? Are they coming from a place of honesty, integrity, and truth? Are they coming from a place of needing, emotional neediness? Or are they coming from a place of my sense of what I can achieve in this lifetime that is also going to be of benefit to other life forms? All of this is mixing up in this moment. And so come back to yourself. Don't try to evaluate yourself based on what you have been taught by social media or by people around you, or perhaps your family, religion, political views, culture, country, whatever. Don't assess yourself by those criteria, but assess yourself by the fact that you have come here with this specific way of showing up, with quite a unique personal way of showing up, which is very much that Mars in Leo. And you want to dig into yourself and try to find out, what makes me motivated to do something? What makes me take action? The better question, rather than saying what makes me happy, because happy often we associate with comfort and being at ease. So what makes me feel motivated? What brings me to life? What animates me? What is my ikigai that gets me out of bed? That's part of the notion of the sun. It's our sense of purpose, and that is ruling this Mars in Aries. Even when retrograde, Mars is still Mars. Mars wants to take action. It's not like you're going to go to sleep for the next couple of months and wait for Mars to station direct on the 24th of February and then jump into action. So you need to be able to take this energy of Mars, internalize it, and then figure out how you want to go back over things that need revision, that need some kind of assessment based on what it is that you consider your new aims or your sense of purpose in this moment. Right, so there we are. This is what the Mars retrograde represents. The Neptune shift is an epoch shift. It's a whole era that is changing, and that is the background energy of this Mars. I'm going to come back later in December and talk a lot more about that Neptune, but I will cover it sign by sign as we go now, because that Neptune is very, very close now, especially as it's going to be stationing direct on the 7th of December. Here we're on the 6th of December at almost, 11:30, let's say, roughly, Greenwich Mean Time, which is the universal time. And that would be the 6th of December, anywhere west of the UK, so in North America, South America, and it would be the 7th of December in Europe and eastbound. These things don't matter. It's not like you're going to be poked at 11:30 p.m. Universal Time and suddenly realize that Mars is now retrograde, but just to factor that in, it's going to be a shift that you're going to start to be playing with over the next few days. Neptune, as I mentioned, is very much more subtle and yet very important, especially if you have planets at those later degrees of Pisces, so the early couple of degrees of Aries. Now, Mars, by the way, in terms of how it might affect you, by degree, is quite important for the fixed signs. Now that would be, let's give it an orb of 2 degrees, so that would be up to 8 degrees of Leo or Aquarius or Scorpio or Taurus. So if you have anywhere from 0 to 8 degrees of Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, then you're going to be most powerfully impacted by opposition or square or conjunction if it's Leo, obviously. And that will create a bigger tension in terms of what the desire for change, the desire to do something different. Now, if this is about your sun in Leo, this is still extremely important because your sun rules Leo. So very prominent, very important for Leo sun. And that will be your personal identity and your sense of self and your role in life. And it also will reflect on how you engage in your career, or your sense of vocation, or your higher purpose, your sense of drive in this lifetime. If it's about your ascendant, it really does reflect all of your life. It does reflect all aspects of your experience. That can be your physical body. It can be aspects of your overall health, because a Leo ascendant with Mars in the ascendant can show issues around health, or something that requires your attention, or a desire to improve your health, for example, issues around your constitution. And then if it's your and of course any other aspect of life, relationships, particularly by opposition and so on. But it's very, very much integrated in all aspects of you. You personally, as a Leo rising, become very highly motivated. And if you have a Leo moon, then this is very personal, it's emotional, and it's perhaps even psychological. So this is how you think. Moon is the terrain of your mind, where Mercury is the thought process and how you communicate, how you process the data, as it were, whether it's the words or the numbers or the way of exchanging things. The basis of the mind is the heart-mind complex. It's the feeling nature, the memory, and all of the internal emotions that you might experience. That can also reflect issues around home, mother, or literally where you live, because the moon can reflect your home. So those are the ways that can internalize. There may be some emotional frustration in that event. So let's have a look sign by sign at all of this going on now. I'll just change this from seconds. My computer's very slow. Things are going strange here for me. As I mentioned before, we're working on a bit of a bare bones system here. I'm still in India, and so I'm doing the screen shot. So okay, we're going to do this a little differently. Let's see if we can. It's not letting me change. Why not? Okay. Hello, anybody there? Okay, I'm going to pause the recording and see what's going wrong, and I will be back with Aries. Right, so we're back now with Aries rising, or if it's your sun or moon, that also applies to you. So listen to the introduction to know how. And for Aries, this is quite significant for you because Mars is your ruler. And so when Mars is doing anything, you want to pay attention. And so it's a very dynamic trine from Mars in a fire sign to your fire sign. And especially because you've had the North Node moving through your sign since July 2023, now Mars in retrograde is trining your North Node. And that has really been the case for the past month. So this is not new, but it's just that whatever that new inspiration has been for you, whatever this new drive, Mars in the 5th house is giving you lots of ideas, lots of creative impulse, lots of desire nature, perhaps that can be around your own self-expression. Especially with the North Node going through the 1st house, this is actually really fantastic for you, having Mars in the 5th, and you'll get that back in the 2nd half of April, and then through May and into the 1st half of June, when Mars goes back into Leo. But you're here fully to expand, fully to grow into something that you're ready for. But yet, now your ruler is retrograde. And as the ruler is retrograde, it does slow you down in a certain way that can be very constructive. So think of it in terms of how you need to contemplate what the steps are, what it is that you're doing. This may entail something to do with business or some kind of activity that you are undertaking. If you are an athlete, which many Aries types are, this is also very strong for you. There may be something that changes your way of training, changes your way of working out, changes your way of organizing your fitness regime or even your goals, because we've got Jupiter in the 3rd house of goals, and that has also been retrograding. Maybe in the delay with the square to Saturn in your 12th house, maybe there's something going on that has prevented you from moving forward in this athletic endeavor or in this inspired, maybe risk-taking venture that you're on. That can also be involving money, investments, and so on. I'd need to see your whole natal chart to know which one of those it applies to. The 5th house also is romance, and certainly because you've had this axis of the North and South Node moving through your 1st and 7th house of relationships, you will no doubt have come up against all kinds of notions of what relationships mean to you right now. Mars in the 5th can make you extremely attractive. It can make you very dynamic. It makes you want to go out and get involved with people, especially Mars now in opposition to Venus in the 11th. You might be meeting friends or meeting somebody through friends. That becomes extremely important. Just beware, as Venus is with Pluto. It's a tricky time to meet somebody simply because that person will knock your socks off. They will change your life, and it may not be a comfortable ride. It really will depend on your level of maturity and your age and all kinds of different factors. But Venus-Pluto can be profound change that can also entail, especially in opposition to Mars, your ruler, can entail some profound psychological stuff as well. So there can be old karmic relationships that come up that are not necessarily comfortable. When people talk about wishing they would meet their soulmate, I always say to them, be careful what you wish for, because the soulmate is not this wonderful romantic partner that fixes your life and makes everything great. Your soulmate is somebody you've got a contract with that you need to clear karma with. And that is sometimes extremely challenging. Now, that doesn't have to be your case, but should you meet somebody now, or should you be involved in a relationship like that right now, this Mars retrograde is an opportunity for you to really reflect deeply on your desire nature. What is attracting you to this situation? And that can include financial issues as well. Venus is in the 11th house, which is the house of money, and she rules your second house of money as well. So this can have something to do with finances. Pluto also involves issues around big money, for example, especially with Venus. And also, Mars rules your 8th house as well. So it rules you, your ascendant, sun or moon sign, and it rules your 8th house from the ascendant, sun or moon sign. And so that is going to pull in some kind of notion of what you share with other people. Now, that can also be a deeply psychological thing, as I just mentioned, with the Venus-Mars opposition, including Pluto. And it can also have something to do with sharing money, sharing resources of all kinds. That can be sexual relationships as well, intimate relationships of all kinds. That can be emotional intimacy, psychological, sexual, obviously. And this is between the 5th and the 8th house. So especially because we've got this Mars in opposition to Venus, for many of you, this will be something to do with an intimate relationship and a choice that needs to be made there. But it has a lot to do with who you are being in this area of your life. Are you living through your integrity? Are you in the right relationship? Are you in right relationship with yourself? This is the trine from Mars to your North Node. What you've experienced now from, let's say, late October all the way through till this retrograde, which was exact late on the 6th of December Universal Time, has been affecting you very personally, as Mars has been in a trine to that North Node in your first house and broadly trining whatever planets are in Aries for you. So a really significant time for Aries. It's a really helpful time to get quite serious about your personal awareness, your self-awareness. Who am I in this moment? Who do I want to be in my life? We've got the Sun and Mercury up in the 9th house of your sense of purpose, your bigger vision for your life drives, and we've got Jupiter ruling that from the 3rd house of your current goals and aims and wishes and desires, while Venus and Pluto are up there changing the long-term vision for your life. So a really, really important time for Aries. This is a good moment to slow down and reconsider. You will have Saturn and then first Neptune, then Saturn moving into your first house soon enough. So in the springtime, you're going to feel again another big nudge. And that will really be fixing. It'll be kind of stabilizing whatever it is that you decide now needs to change, needs a new direction. Think inwardly, think in terms of what is your long game. So Aries fire signs in general, but let's say specifically Aries in your case, can be very impulsive. And that impulsive quality can have you thinking short-term. Short-term gain in this particular instance can cause you some friction or regrets later on. And you'll find out when Mars goes back into the 5th house in April, what you might have regretted. So let's just say that this is a great time for you to look inward, especially as Saturn is in Pisces, as Neptune is still in Pisces in your 12th house and about to station just hours from this Mars retrograde, station direct. And that direct station of Neptune is now the signal that whatever you've been dwelling on over these last 13 years with Neptune in your 12th house. Those inner workings, any issues around self-undoing, any issues around things that you're unconscious of in your behavior patterns or in the way that you live your life, all of those things are going to become more clear to you as Neptune starts to move through the 12th house, right out into your first house of self, and changing the way that you show up as well. So give this time as much time as it needs, as much space as it needs. Don't, if you can avoid it, don't rush into decisions, and try as much as you can to find the truth of yourself. Who am I in this lifetime, and how can I express myself fully, just as I am? And that is your true nature, Aries. Just like a child, not childish, but childlike, like a child, showing up like a fresh flower and just being yourself. You also, of course, have Chiron in your first house. That's going to be stationing direct at the end of December, and that will start to move Chiron further into your first house, and it will never come back to this point of the 19-degree point of Aries where it is through December. That's not really affecting this particular picture, but it's always there for you, Aries, and it has been since 2018, so it's a long story. So all of that to say that this is an opportunity for you to become really clear of yourself, your sense of destiny, your sense of purpose, your vision for your life, and take your time. You need to go inward. Saturn and Neptune are saying the juicy stuff is here in your 12th house. The choices, the wish to do it all and have it all and be it all in the 3rd house with Jupiter in Gemini, it's slowed down, and that's a good thing, because there may have been some over exuberance or over inspired decision making that was taking you perhaps down the wrong road or with the wrong people. Now you've got a clear path ahead. So take your time. You've got all the time that you need. This lifetime is as long as you're living your life consciously, you're living a good life. So don't worry about ticking all the boxes, and look inwards instead of outwards for whatever is important to you. Keep in mind also that your ruler, Mars, is the exaltation ruler of your career house. This will be very, very connected to what you do out in the world, your sense of your career and what you're engaging with in career, especially if you're one of those Aries, there are many of them, who works for yourself. If you're self-employed or run a business, this is extremely important. You have to really settle, really figure out what it is that I'm doing right and what I no longer want in this area of my life. If this is about children, by the way, this of course is the house of children as well, then there may be something in the relationship to your children that is requiring an adjustment in terms of how you engage with your children, or how your children themselves are engaging with life, and perhaps there's a need for that to change. And this can have moments of tension. This depends on your natal chart, of course. It's not for everybody, but there can be moments of tension with your children. There can anyway be a lot of progressive change and dynamism in the context of your relationship with your children in the parenting role, because again, the 10th house represents parents, your role as a parent or an authority figure in general, and Mars is the exaltation ruler of that. So there's something that may have happened that you may need to reflect on, that may be something you have done or that you could do differently to improve the circumstances around your children or around the process of having children. Mars going through the 5th in terms of pregnancy and childbirth is not an easy time. So if you are expecting or you're going to plan on having a child, take good care of your health. Make sure that you are really serious about doing all the best things for your personal condition, so that everything works in your favor, as Mars going through the 5th can bring up pesky interventions and things that can disturb the process of pregnancy or childbirth. That's it, I think, for Aries. And of course, this all is very general. This is not your natal chart, so many of these things will be reflected in your life and many of them will not. So you can take what works for you and leave the rest. So Aries, make the most of this with your ruler now in retrograde, and dig deep for the next couple of months or 3 months while the ruler is retrograding until it emerges then through your fourth house. And we'll come back to talk about Mars going into your fourth house in just a couple of weeks. Bye for now. Taurus, this Mars is going through your fourth house where you have Leo, so you're a fixed sign and so is Leo. And you also have Venus and Pluto now at the top of your chart, also a fixed sign. And all of this is deeply impacting your career, whatever is going on in your, or perhaps your social standing. This can be around your relationships, your marital relationships perhaps, or business partnerships where you're needing to negotiate issues around money or what you share. Property, perhaps, because the fourth house involves property. Jupiter is in the house of money, and it's ruling your eighth house, where we find Mercury and the Sun, and Mercury is ruling your second house. So something is connecting you deeply in negotiations around family situations, or marital situations, or business partnership situations that may cause a certain amount of tension or a need for adjustment. Your ruler, Venus, so Venus rules Taurus, your ruler is at the top of the chart with Pluto. And she's going to continue every 9 months or so as Venus goes her way through the chart. Venus is going to be encountering Pluto for the next 20 years in your 10th house. That's like saying, whatever you're doing, you need to find your power and the way that you connect outwardly in the world. You need to reach out into the world in a different way and activate yourself out in the house of career, in the house of inspiration in terms of how you serve community or how you work out in the world, what you might describe as your vocation. This can also be with reference to parents. If you are yourself a person who is now old enough to be needing to care for your parents, or if you are a parent, this can also be in the dynamic of the relationship between you and your children, or you and your parents. This can have something to do with, of course, with inheritance as well. We've got that 8th house, other people's money aspect, which can have money coming to you through things that are not earned directly by you, but coming from other people. That can also imply clients, for example. Mars does rule your 7th house of other people, including clients and business partnerships. And Mars rules your 12th house, which is the house of faraway places and people. Your self-undoing as well. That's another way of describing the 12. Things that you do that you shouldn't do, or that you're not doing that you should be doing. And the 12th house is also the house of loss. So here we want to understand that in the greater sense, there can be a loss of a person or a property or something that you had felt was important, but is now somehow changing. So it's either physically changing and there's actually been a loss, or you're needing to grapple with some sort of loss, or there's a realization that it's time to move on. That's the other way of this loss, this coming from this place of letting go. It's the ultimate place of release. I'm letting go of something that is no longer appropriate, no longer helpful for me. So with Taurus on the ascendant, again, Venus becomes very important, and Venus is all through this week. As I'm speaking, it's the 5th of December, and all the way through till about the 10th, 11th of December, maybe even until the 12th of December, Venus is in opposition to Mars. So that's going to really provoke quite a lot of ideas, stimulus, passion, desires. You might, again, this might have something to do with property or home or your family of origin, your roots, your lineage. And it can also be very psychological. So Mars in the 4th house can show you areas of life that you are not necessarily connecting with. And that's especially true because your fire trine here with where Mars is also affecting the 8th house and the 12th house. So 4th, 8th, and 12th are all psychological houses, and there's a lot of activity there for you. So there may be something here that you're realizing that is some very deep thing that is coming through, and this Mars retrograde will help you understand that. It can have something to do with values or ambition, or it can have something again to do with parents or your role as a parent, and it can have something to do with your career and how that might influence you in your private life. The balance between what you do publicly and what you do privately is the 4th and 10th, well, the 10th and the 4th house, just to keep it in line. So the 4th house is very deep. It's very impactful. It's not necessarily obvious to other people what's going on. So this might be an internal process that other people don't know about, that you're dealing with on your own. 4th, 8th, and 12th houses are very intimate, personal energies that other people may not be aware what you're grappling with. But certainly because the South Node has been through your 6th house, and it's also ruled by Venus, your ruler, that has been a year and a half of big change in terms of your health, in terms of the balance between your mental and physical health, or psychological and emotional and physical health, but also in terms of your work and what you do every day. How does that work for you? Is it working for you at all? Is it something that you're ready to let go of? Is there something that you realize you're doing that you need to do differently? So Mars is going to be very helpful in that sense. Not necessarily an easy ride, because Mars going through the 4th can pull up quite a lot of tension or conflict that can also be necessary to restructure. If this is about property, land, for example, or a physical home, house or building that you live in, you might also be requiring renovations. It might be something that is necessary just to maintain the value of the place, or it might be necessary because you decide that you're ready for a new environment. The 4th house, much like the 3rd house, is part of your environment. The 4th house is more your personal environment. The 3rd house is your local space, and that's where Mars is going to go backwards into. We'll talk about that towards the end of December. So Taurus, I hope this was helpful. There's a lot that can be said about this for you, but at the same time, it's profound change that is going to draw you into a completely different frame of reference in your life, especially because we've got this Pluto in opposition to Mars, which for you is going to show up very, very differently in terms of how you engage in the world outside, based on what you're establishing in your inner experience of self. And especially as your ruler is right there with Pluto while Mars is retrograding, I'd say this Mars retrograde is particularly significant for you, Taurus. So make the most of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Gemini, this is happening in your 3rd house of local space. And this is something that you want to understand as your relationships of everyday quality, or your relationships with people that are important to you to get your to function as you do day to day. It's also the house of thinking and how you approach language or communication of all kinds, exchanges of all kinds. It's the house of siblings, and it's where we first learn to compete. It's where we first learn to compare and compete and try to fight for that last piece of pie, or to be the best, or to be mommy's favorite, or whatever it is. And that's that 3rd house quality. And with Mars there in the 3rd house, there is quite a lot of desire nature. So Mars contributes to this notion of ambition and drive. It does quite well in the 3rd house, but it keeps you extremely busy. And also, it's very much to do with your sense of what you want to achieve in this moment. What are your aims at this time? With Mars in the 3rd, there can also be some sharp words. There might be some tension or some need for things to be hashed out. That can be constructive, and it can also be destructive, because let's face it, it's Mars. Mars is not only about moving forward and advancing and taking decisions and making choices. It's also about cutting and severing and separating and causing a little bit of trouble here and there, sometimes more than a little bit. Mars is also ruling your 11th house of your future and your vision and how you connect socially with people, and it also rules your 6th house of your work, your sense of your everyday life, and how you move through your everyday life. That includes your health, and it includes how you deal with your health issues. So here Mars in the 3rd house is asking you to make choices or relate to people in a new way that is based on this new sense of desire, a new sense of purpose, a new aim, a new need to take action. This can be something to do with siblings. It can certainly extend to cousins and your extended family. So there can be something here that you need to deal with in terms of relationships with the family, extended family relationships, or it can also be about friendships. And since we have the North Node ruled by Mars in your 11th house of groups of friends, acquaintances, your future vision, the political or religious or social groups that you spend time with, there's perhaps something here that you're needing to contemplate. And all the more so because the Sun and Mercury are quite active this whole week in your 7th house of relationships, in opposition to Jupiter in your 1st house. So Jupiter is ruling Mercury and the Sun, and Mercury is your ruler. So Mercury is ruling Jupiter. So there's something here about you and how you connect with other people. The 7th house is also a desire house. So 3, 7, and 11 are houses of Kama in the Indian astrology. Houses that reflect the things that we want out of life. How do we reach into what we want in life? Now, obviously, I'd need to see your personal chart to be able to see how you do that, how your natal Mars operates. But let's say with a Mars, anyway, in Leo, your desire nature is very strong. But as as Mars is retrograding in Leo, it's asking you to revise and going back over perhaps things that over the past month or so through November that you've been wanting to cultivate or wanting to stir up, or things that have been drawn to your attention. Things have been brought to your attention based on perhaps a need to change something about these 3rd house issues. You've also had Mars going through your 2nd house of money, and so now maybe Mars is showing you something that needs to change in terms of how you exchange money, how you work through issues of money, finances, exchanges of all kinds, and also how you communicate around that. What is the way that you express all of that? The 3rd house is also literal expression, and since Venus is up there in the 9th house with Pluto, and Saturn is in your 10th house also at this time, squaring Jupiter in your 1st, you might actually be thinking in terms of starting a course or teaching something, or bringing a book to fruition, or it could be anything like starting a blog, for example, or deciding to renovate or upload a new website or a new aspect to your website. And especially so because the 11th house is involved here, where the North Node has been for a year and a half. So it's not, I doubt that it would be something new, but it's rather a new way of doing the thing that you have been thinking about doing for quite some time. With Venus and Pluto up there in the 9th house, it's an opportunity for you to see your sense of purpose differently. So there's a vision that's connected to this new aim, and you want to try and get clear. What is that vision? And that has been formulated over the last year and a half with the help of the North Node moving through your 11th. So how you're seeing your future, how you see your participation in society has been a part of the equation of how do I see my vision. You also have Neptune in the 10th house, about to move into your 11th house, but just hours after Mars is retrograde, Neptune is stationing direct. So this is not necessarily something that you're going to be feeling very strongly, but it will change in the long run the quality of how you show up in the world, and it will change also the nature of your vision for the future over the next few months, as Neptune is leaving your 10th house on the 30th of March, and it's going to be already at the end of January merging with the North Node in your 10th house before it does that. So there's a lot of energy here around how you show up in the world. What are your aims? What are my personal desires as I go out in the world and do this thing? This is where Mars retrograding will really help you, Gemini, to get clear on that. It's not always easy for Gemini to make decisions. It's one of the challenges of the dual signs is that there's often an ambiguity around things. There's a feeling of either fear of missing out, or there's a feeling of, maybe I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, or there can also be a feeling of, well, I like both and I want to keep both, and if I give up one, then it means I'm letting go of something that I also would like. So try to pin yourself down and try to, over the next couple of months, as Mars is retrograding through your 3rd and into your 2nd house, try to become more clear on these things. Particularly now you've got a month of Mars in Leo where you can really dig into your integrity and try and understand, what is my opinion on this? What is my desire? And also cleaning up any relational issues that may have been there. If there's been any discussion or issue with somebody, lack of integrity, then that would be an opportunity also for you to clean up the mess and start afresh then when Mars goes into your 3rd house again by the 18th of April, where it's going to stay until the middle of June. So you'll have time to rework this. But at the same time, the deeper you dig right now, the better your results will be in the spring. Mars opposite Venus anyway often reflects issues around relationships, and that can be issues anywhere, especially with Pluto there, anywhere ranging from betrayal or a feeling of frustration to sexual tension. And that sexual tension may be with somebody who's not even your partner. And so that can also be something that you realize is there, but it's not necessary to act upon it. And that is coming down also to the choices that need to be made and where that integrity red line is for you. So Gemini, lots to mull over there. Certainly there's going to be a whole new vision for yourself out in the world after this Mars retrograde is over. And you're going to be taken in a whole different direction in 2025. So the better you can focus in on what it is that you need and want, how you can express yourself through all of this, the more you're going to find satisfactory results, and also the power to extend yourself out through your everyday work, through your day-to-day situation, and also into community where you want to participate. Good luck with all of that, Gemini, and I'll see you in the next video. And so Cancer, this is happening in your second house of money. I'm also Cancer rising and moon, and so I've had a big tax bill that I have to pay. And I knew it was coming. My accountant was actually late, and so that was my personal dilemma. My accountant was very uncommunicative, and so that had been a very big source of frustration that I'm currently grappling with and have been for the last week. And so any Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising sign will be having a lot of focus on issues of earnings, money. Also, Mars rules your 10th house, and it rules your 5th house. So that can also involve career, how you do your work, how you show up publicly, your social status, but also your ambitions, your greater drives, your greater aims in life. Based on what? Based on your values. Second house of values. And what you can bring into your values. Now, this can be also very straightforward material stuff. Where's the money? Who's my accountant? Do I want a new accountant? Do you want a new accountant? I sure do. And or is it something to do with how you manage your money? The 5th house, which Mars also rules, is the house of impulse, and it's the house of inspiration that can lead you into taking risks. And with Scorpio on that 5th house, you actually, depending on your natal chart, can take some risks that end up not working out. Not suggesting you have, but this is one potential for Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising. And so here, for example, with Mars in the 2nd, it's going to show you, did that risk pan out either financially, or did it pan out in terms of what you feel is important in terms of your integrity and your values? This can also have something to do with family. The 2nd house represents family, and you do have the 4th house, South Node in the 4th house at the same time. So there has been change in terms of your connection to your family of origin, links around where you live, your roots, your home, your legacy family, especially also because you've got Jupiter in the 12th house, opposing Mercury and the Sun in the 6th house, and this can often connect you to ancestors and the people that you spend time with day to day, or people that you've been dealing with maybe in a way that feels very distant, very far away. I know recently my uncle passed at a very advanced age, and we knew that he would, and still you feel very far away when there's a loss in the family. You feel very, very far away, and that Jupiter in the 12th signifies that. Now, I have that natally. I also have Saturn in the 9th and a bunch of other things in the 9th, so that is also part of the natal signature, being far away from family. But just to say that for some of you, that can also be your case, especially as we've got Venus and Pluto in the 8th house, which signifies some kind of letting go, along with the 12th house, which is where Jupiter is, in the house of loss and letting go, final endings. This can also come through something to do with money that you share with other people, or how you share that money. Is there a new challenge to resources or how you earn income? Pluto and Venus together can be very constructive in the 8th house, can be very helpful, and it can also, especially in opposition to Mars, create some tension, create some challenges. So there will be one way or another a need to reframe, reconstruct, re-evaluate your way of dealing with money and other people. In this particular case, especially the first couple of weeks of this Mars retrograde. This will continue all the way through till the 6th of December when Mars goes back into your first house. And it will remain in your first house until it gets to 17 degrees, and then station direct on the 24th of February, finally leaving your first house and moving out of your first house back into Leo and covering this same territory that we're dealing with now in December from the second half of April, from the 18th of April onwards. So whatever you're grappling with now, you're going to be grappling with again in April, but hopefully from a frame of reference that is much more calculated and clear. Mars is really very much about showing up in a way that is clear, having goals, knowing what you need to do, how to do it. So this is an opportunity for something big to change, something that you can really dig deep into that will affect your social standing, your career, your ambitions, your drive. How people see you potentially. This again depends on your natal chart. That will be one or another stronger influence. And then again, the 5th house about creativity, potentially connecting you to your children or other baby-like projects like business projects or art projects, your personal creativity. And the 2nd house also associates with not only the family aspect in terms of what supports you family-wise or connecting you to family, but also the notion of wanting a family or not. So that also for some of you will be playing back and forth with that 5th house, 2nd house, 10th house notion where Mars is very connected to, who am I? Am I a parent? Do I want to be a parent? Am I an empty nester? Maybe I didn't want children and now I do, and that's the thing. I really want them, or now I thought I wanted children but I really don't. And these are the bigger questions that Mars is going to be asking, or having you ask yourself, as well as it goes through this dynamic. 5th house is business. Of course, it's an entrepreneurial energy. And we also have the Sun and Mercury coming together in your 6th house of everyday work in opposition to Jupiter. It's a very helpful mutual reception, as Mercury and Jupiter are in each other's signs. But that is a very, again, potentially exuberant time where there can be choices made that are a bit spontaneous. Luckily, we have Saturn basically squaring, creating a T-square from this opposition into Saturn in Pisces. So that can actually work to your benefit because it's going to slow down anything that could have you accelerating too fast, where you realize, actually, it's better that this thing didn't work out, or actually, it's better that I had to delay this thing. Or it's better that I didn't really get all that information up front and now I know how to deal with that. So all of these things will be slowly made clear to you. For example, when Mercury stations direct again on the 15th of December, and that will be at the time of the full moon in Gemini. And that will perhaps answer these questions in terms of your work or what you might need to do about that. Or is it just that you need to sit with this for a while and let the answers come to you? Try not to stress, especially because it's really only a week or 10 days out. But whatever this Mars question is, it's a bigger question that is in part of the much more rare cycle of Mars retrogrades, so it only happens every 2 years. So think long and hard about how you're organizing finances, how you're organizing your income, your valuables, your wealth, and your relationships that connect you to people that you share those things with, whether they be family or other partnerships, business or client type relationships. I think that's it for you, Cancer. We're going to come back and talk a whole lot more about Cancer when we get back to Mars coming into your sign after the 6th of January. I'll be back already in a couple of weeks by the end of December, so we can talk more about Mars going backwards in Cancer. Neptune is going to move into your 10th house of career as of the 30th of March. But already by the end of January, Neptune and the North Node will be meeting at the end of your 9th house. So this is another thing that's happening roughly around the same time, within hours of Mars stationing retrograde. We've got Neptune stationing direct on the 7th of December in your 9th house. And that's going to shift the energy of your 9th house vision for life. What do I have faith in? What do I believe in? How do I communicate that in terms of teaching that or helping others with that? What's my sense of purpose? Has that been clear to me? Is this clearer now? And especially if you have any planets that are in that the later degrees of Pisces, let's say from 25 Pisces all the way through to say 3-4 degrees of Aries, and equally if you have up to 3-4 degrees of Cancer or Virgo, or Libra or Capricorn, you're going to also feel this very, very strongly because that will square. So the Neptune in general is not a very powerful shift when it changes direction. It's not so obvious. It becomes obvious over time. It's not as obvious as Mars. But why this is important is because it's now going towards the end of your 9th house, and already at the end of March you can expect a big change in your 10th house, squaring you and creating this dynamic of something very different showing up out in the world. Now at that time, Mars will still be working its way through your first house. So you're not done. You're not out of the woods yet. And Mars rules your 10th house. So again, this is going to become very important as we go through December. I will talk much more about this Mars in Cancer. But keep this in mind as Mars is going through your 2nd house of your values, your own sense of self-worth. It's affecting this 10th house where you've already had the North Node for a year and a half, since July 2023, and you're going to have Neptune and then Saturn moving into that 10th house, putting a lot of attention on what you do out in the world and what is your role, how do you do it. So make sure you get a lot of time to focus on these questions of your values, your own self-worth, what is supporting you, what do you need to support you, and how are you managing money? Are you needing to work harder? Are you needing to work smarter? What is the thing that's happening there? If this is about children, there may be something in your children's life that you need to draw to your attention or to their attention. You may need to intervene for whatever reason in their experience. This will depend on your natal chart. So it may influence the role of parenting because Mars rules your 10th house, which is the sign of parents as well, whether it's about you as a parent or whether it's about you being a parent, or rather having to parent your own parents, for example. Either way, this might involve you taking on a different role in your family, taking much more responsibility and action, which are the key words for Mars and Leo. Maybe having to step in and do something for your parents or for in your role of parent for your own children. There's so many possibilities. I have to end it here because I need to see your natal chart to find out more about what's going on there for Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising sign. Do listen to the introduction because there's a lot more information there, as well as the original video that I did earlier. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Leo, you might have guessed that this is all about you, and so you are in this hot seat now with Mars moving through your 1st house of self. Now, Mars in the 1st house is extremely helpful, really dynamic, gets you up and going, gets you off the couch and mobile, and it can also bring you a sense of confidence and courage. Now, this is especially often very helpful for Leo rising. Leo Sun, maybe a bit less so, but especially Leo rising types tend not to be this typical Leo archetype of showing off or look at me and I need to be seen kind of thing. And often the opposite is true. There's often a difficulty in finding that place of confidence in just being yourself. This is an opportunity, a beautiful opportunity for Leo, whether it's Sun, Moon, or Rising, to really come to this place of who am I and how do I want to manifest something in my life. It's in a trine to Mercury, which is coming into Cazimi with the Sun in your 5th house of self-expression. It's the natural house of Leo. It's showing how you express yourself in that way that is quite exuberant because it's a fire sign, in your case obviously with a Leo, 1st house Leo or Sun or Moon, 5 houses from all of those placements, we have Sagittarius. So there's an exuberance about you in the way that you express yourself That's what makes Leo Leo. It's not because Leo is Leo that it's exuberant. It's because Sagittarius is on the 5th house and it's ruled by Jupiter, and it says, let's go, let's show off, let's do this thing. And we do it in a fiery way, and we do it in a big way. We go big or go home. And here we have Jupiter in opposition to that. So Jupiter is ruling your 5th house and Mercury is ruling your 11th house. So they're cooperating here, pulling in this vision that you have for your future, maybe a vision for how you want to contribute to society or how you want to participate in society, and it's giving you some creative impulses, creative ideas. Now this Mercury and Sun Cazimi that's happening roughly around the same time is a bump, let's say, in time that is just giving you a vision, giving you an idea, inspiration, especially in the 5th house. So whatever this has been, whatever this has meant to you, let's say the first week of December and into the second week of December, is really helpful to note down. Make sure you understand what it is that you're getting enthusiastic about, and try to apply that. Now, what action do I want to take based on this? Mars going retrograde now is having you perhaps second guess some of these inspirations or some of these ideas. Perhaps it's based on opposition coming from others. It might be because now we have Venus and Pluto in your 7th house, right opposite that Mars, opposite you. And there may be some need of another person or a relationship issue that needs to be tended to, that needs to be dealt with. There may be a change in relationship. There may be something that comes in a new package that you need to resolve. With Saturn going through your 8th house, ruling the 7th house and also 6th house, Saturn in the 8th can often reflect, especially as the 7th house ruler, can often reflect that there is a feeling of isolation or a feeling of not getting support from other people that usually you get support from, or not getting even financial support. So there may be something here that requires your attention that you need to take good care of. And especially because it's personal to you. It's, what am I doing about this? Mars in the 1st house says, what action am I taking? What will I do about this? Now, Mars rules your 4th house of home. That also implies your emotional home, your psychological home, your inner home, and your sense of what is important to you to make you feel secure and happy. And this is important to understand as well. Whatever actions you're going to take, whatever things you're doing are going to lead to this feeling of security or otherwise. Now we have this situation where Mars is also ruling the 9th house, where we find the North Node is in a trine to Mars from your 1st house. North Node has been trining your 1st house for 1.5 years, bringing a lot of your attention and focus to this new vision that you have for yourself. How you see your role in life, how you see your deeper purpose or your higher purpose, depending on how you want to express that. Now, the 9th house also reflects father, can be relationships with father. 4th house reflects mother, and so there can be some issue also between you and your parents, or in their circumstances, or that involves your parents and or family issues that are also part of this bigger story. You also will have Mars going through your 12th house, which in your case is in the sign of Cancer, and that also reflects mother and family and home. So that might have been part of the story for September and October for you, and that would come back in January, February, March, and the first half of April, as Mars is going to be lingering quite a while in your 12th house. So use this time between now and the 6th of January, while Mars is in your 1st house, even though it's retrograde, use this time to really understand, what is my role? How do I want to take that out into the world? How do I want to see that connect with my creative expression, my purpose, my sense of my what brings me out into myself, and also perhaps makes me happy or feel secure. And this can also be quite directly linked to property issues as well, because Mars does rule the 4th, where we have Scorpio, which can be connected with land and property as well, inherited stuff, partly because we've got all this action up here in your 8th house in Pisces, and Jupiter is in the 11th house of gains as well. So you might, when Jupiter is actually stationing direct, you might realize some gains around these things, and perhaps not so much before, or not in the way that you had assumed they might come through. That would be on the 4th of February when Jupiter is stationing direct. So before that time, we've got a square between Saturn and Jupiter, that might create some kind of feeling of drag or tension, but think of this as very helpful. This is creating a T-square with Mercury and the Sun, which have been kazimi this week, and that connection, this inspiration that you're getting through the opposition and the square is, the inspiration is there, but the timing may be off, or the inspiration is there, but the circumstances may be off, or the people in my life may not be ready for it. Or the people in my life are changing, and that changes the playground, and now I need to adapt to that. So use this Mars retrograding to understand what are your deeper needs. This is very profound for you, being very personal to you. The last time you would have had Mars retrograding in your sign was like 15 years ago, so 2010. And that only even got into the first degree of your sign, so this is almost not really relevant. This is much more impactful for Leo now. This will, of course, impact on not only your home and family, but also your career energy or your social connections, your social status, and, of course, these relationship connections, as Mars is in opposition to Pluto and Venus 3 times. As I mentioned, you'll hear more in the introduction about these qualities of these planetary oppositions, but this is very personal to you because it's in the realm of you in relationship. Right? So Leo, make the most of this. This is an opportunity for you to understand yourself. Who am I in this lifetime? Who am I in this moment? How do I manifest who I think I am? And what action do I need to take? And how do I maybe need to revise the certain actions that I have already taken? Perhaps especially through November, where you've already maybe decided something or something has occurred that you now need to respond to and maybe even tidy up and improve on. So Neptune has been in your 8th house of other people's money, and that's been for about 13 years. It's been since March of 2011, so it's almost 14 years now. And Neptune is stationing direct at the same time as Mars is retrograding. Just within hours of that, we have Venus moving into your 7th, Neptune stationing direct, and then Mars stationing retrograde. So as Neptune is stationing at 27 degrees, you'll be probably not so clearly noticing this. It's not going to be perhaps as strong an impact as certainly the Mars retrograde would be, or the Venus moving into your 7th. But still, over time, very important. Neptune is going to meet up with the North Node in January, exactly at the end of January, beginning of February. And as Neptune is leaving your 8th house, it's going to move into your 9th house the end of March. And that's going to then put Neptune in a place where you start to have a new sense of what you believe, what you have faith in. So really examine the last year and a half, from July 2023 until now, where the North Node has been going through your 9th house, where Chiron may have had you doubting what you have faith in, maybe working through issues of faith or religion or even relationships to your father, the solar masculine, and really understand what those messages have been for you in this period, where you've been shown a new sense of purpose, a new sense of vision for yourself. And Neptune, when it moves into your 9th house slowly, as it's moving away from the 8th, is going to change that phase of where it has been for 12, 13 years, almost 14 years now, changing your deeper psychological nature to make you more available to a higher vision for yourself, a higher belief system, or a higher sense of faith. And so this is a wonderful opportunity, as Mars is in your 1st house, to really get clear: who am I? What's my role in my life? And what is my place in the cosmos? And I will come back in later December to talk about Mars then moving back into your 12th house, where that's going to be emphasized yet again. So make the most of this, Leo, and I'll speak to you in the next video. And Virgo, this is going to be happening in your 12th house. And so this is something that you are dealing with in a very intimate way, in maybe a psychological way as well, maybe grappling with things behind the scenes, or with people and places at a distance from you. 12th house is faraway lands, faraway people. That might include customers, clients, and people that you work with in a long distance type relationship. But what's interesting here is that your ruler, Mercury, has just been Kazimi with the Sun around the time of this Mars retrograding. And that Kazimi was the first week of December, but it's still very close to the Sun, even at the into the second week of December. Your ruler is always important to follow, and here it is in the fourth house. So we know that there's something very significant for you that has to do with home and family and your roots and your sense of place in the world, what makes you happy and secure. What do you need in order to be able to sort of launch yourself into the bigger picture of your life? And we see that because this Kazimi has been in opposition to Jupiter. And Jupiter is in your 10th house, and it has been since May of 2023. And it will remain there until June of 2024. And so there's something really big about how your intimate understanding of self and even your intimate connections in life are affecting your sense of your identity out in the world, your purpose, your vision for your role in the world, what you do out there in life. We see also that there's a lot of new inspired energy here in the underground, let's say, sense of psychology or your emotional connections, maybe in relationship to your family, to what home represents for you. And we also find that because we've got Chiron and the North Node in your 8th house, ruled by this Mars in the 12th house, to pulling in these deep psychological houses for you, where there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes that other people may not notice at all. There may be an issue around healing intimacy, getting closer to someone in a way that wasn't comfortable before, and that is maybe triggering things that you are realizing are behaviors that you have, attitudes that you have, or things that you're doing that actually work against you. That's part of the Chiron signature, and it's part of the Mars in 12th signature. Here we have Mars in opposition to Pluto and Venus, which are both now in your 6th house. That applies to colleagues and people that you work with, and maybe employees if that's your case. But it also implies your everyday life, your choices in every day, your everyday schedule, your health, and especially the mental and psychological health balance here between the Venus and Pluto and the Mars opposition. So here we have something quite important that is going to be playing on your unconscious or needing attention, that will be constructive for you over the long run as you dig into this Mars retrograding through December into the 6th of January through your 12th house. Then have that understanding of Mars moving into your 11th house of your friends and your social connections and what you see for your future. That the choices that you need to make, now here we've got Mars ruling your 3rd house as well as your 8th house, so choices, issues around siblings as well, issues around extended family and how you communicate things, those will become more apparent to you as Mars moves back into your 11th house where Cancer is. And so something there will be more, you're in your awareness from the 6th of December until the 18th of April. We'll talk about that more later in December, otherwise this video will go on forever. But keep in mind, all of this process is yours to understand intimately. There's something going on here that connects you to relationship, connects you to the way that you need to communicate in order to feel secure, in order to feel happy, and also in order to feel that you can deepen your connections with people, deepen intimacy. With the Mars in the 12th, you also might be feeling far away, and in a similar way to Cancers, you might be feeling far away from the people in your life, at a distance. You might be feeling cut off. You might be feeling that you haven't got anybody that you can lean on or rely on. So I'm going to wrap this video up because I've got some stuff coming into the room, so there might be some background noise, so apologies for that, Virgo, but I'll just finish this up so I can get it uploaded as well. So this whole story here with Mars in your 12th house can be used as an opportunity for you to really understand how you operate in your unconscious mind and how that might influence the way that you connect with people, the way that you speak with people, the way that you engage in an everyday way with people, and including with your siblings and extended family like cousins and so on. And then finally, with Mars retrograding in the 12th house, if there is something to do with travel, this may be travel based on a need rather than a desire. So this may be travel that you have to do, this travel that is compelling you to go somewhere because it's an obligation, a duty, some responsibility. Mars in Leo, as I mentioned in the beginning, so do listen to the recording from the very, very beginning where I have an introduction. Mars in Leo is about integrity, and in the 12th house we're not always living through our greatest integrity, so it's just important for you to really become clear of what it is that is your place of integrity, whether it be around money, whether it be around career, whether it be around relationships, and walk that talk for yourself, and so it feels comfortable and good, useful for you. Virgo, it's a great opportunity for you to do some housekeeping, and also with Venus and Pluto in the 6th house, you can really come into something very different, very new. If you're looking for new work, probably not until February, when Jupiter is stationing direct in your 10th house, from the 4th of February onwards, that you'll maybe really see the success that you want. Jupiter is going to pass through the square to Saturn in your house of relationship before it gets there. I'm going to have to go. The noise is becoming a little intolerable. Sorry about the background noise there, Virgo. I'm working on a bit of a shoestring at this point on retreat, and I will come back to you in a couple of weeks, and we will then look at your passage of Mars through your 11th house in Cancer, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.